Good morning or good afternoon. Thank you so much for taking a few minutes of your day and of your summer to join me to learn a little bit more about Parker Dewey, how we work with students, how we work with employers, and how we work with you all. My name is Kristen Schrader. It's my privilege to lead the partnerships team here at Parker Dewey. Just a bit of background. So my career started in human resources, so did some college recruiting during that time, but very quickly realized that my passion is about students and education. And so pivoted to working in higher ed entirely in career services. And so for those of you who do that day in and day out, I very well understand that summertime is that precious but very ephemeral time to get a lot of projects done. Probably feels a little weird if you are in a residential campus, students being away. So again, really a huge welcome to you and thank you for joining me today. If any of you were at NACE, hope you enjoyed the conference. I was there as of yesterday as well. So again, I know lots of ideas and I'm really excited to share some of these ideas and thoughts with you. So just a bit of housekeeping before we dig in. We'll record today's session in case you have to step away or in case you want to share anything with a colleague. We'll also send you the slides, but please keep whatever questions you have that are top of mind in the chat. I'll do my best to answer them as soon as possible after you ask it. So I want to make this as useful for you as possible. And to that end, I do have a couple of questions that I want to ask before we get rolling, just to understand a little bit about who is joining us today. And so if you would take a moment to just quickly answer a couple of poll questions. I'm going to launch this first one here, which is, basically, what do you know about us? Your current level of understanding about Parker Dewey and/or micro-internships. Are you an existing partner? Maybe you need a little bit of a refresher. Maybe you're aware, a little bit interested. Maybe you don't know much. Whatever, no right or wrong answer. I just kind of want to get an idea of the room. So thank you for everybody who's answered thus far. I'll give you just another moment. So looks like there's lots of folks who are aware or interested or maybe don't know much, but no existing partners at least yet. But again, no worries and thank you. Today is going to be a definitely fast-paced crash course. And then Shannon, welcome. We definitely know Shannon from Harvey Mudd, so thank you for joining. So awesome. One other quick question before we dig in, and that is, who do you primarily serve day in and day out? Maybe it's multiple audiences, maybe it's a number of different folks, but I'm going to go ahead and end this first poll and then ask this second one here. So are you primarily student-facing, alumni-facing, employer-facing, faculty-facing? Maybe you do a little bit of everything, but I'd love to understand that as well. All right, so community college students, Melinda, thank you. Yes, we do see a lot of growing interest with community college students in particular. So happy to talk a little bit more offline if you have specific questions or want to hear more examples, but thank you for sharing, Melinda. And then everybody who's joined, so everybody is student-facing in today's conversation. So again, not surprised. Some of you also serve alumni, and some of you also, or maybe serve employers in addition to students. So appreciate that insight. And I'm going to leave that particular poll up just in case we have any stragglers or latecomers. But again, I really appreciate this, you taking the moment. We're going to be addressing the entire scope of who you serve. So no matter what answer you gave to that poll question, there's something in this conversation today for each of the different stakeholders that you work with. So real excited to dig in for you. To give you a little bit of a roadmap, we're going to cover 5 key things for today. What is Parker Dewey? How does our platform work and just micro-internships in general work for companies as well as for students and grads? How does it work for you all as a potential or current Parker Dewey partner? We'll talk a little bit about Parker Dewey Plus, which is a new-ish feature and an extension to our partnership that you might be interested in or might be helpful. And then lastly, we're going to dig in just briefly to micro-internship programs. So lots of ground to cover. Let's go ahead and just dig right in by talking first about the folks that is probably the reason why we went into this line of work in the first place, students. And Certainly, the five that are featured here are just a snapshot of the eclectic mix of students that you serve day in and day out. I wanted to feature these five just as quick examples of very typical challenges that many students are facing. Maybe they had a GPA that took a bit of a hit early on as they were figuring out college, and now they're having a hard time coming up to the surface of employers' radar. One thing I heard a lot at NACE from employers is that they are inundated with applications. And certainly that has gotten even more of a challenge for organizations over the past few years. And so, how do students like Legend stand out if their GPA isn't a 3.9 or higher? Or Adila, how do they juggle being a student athlete and their training schedule along with the need to get experience so they can get a job if they're not going to become a professional athlete, which most student athletes will not? Or Yera, who as a PhD student heard about micro-internships because she wanted to get experience, but was also juggling work, family, and other obligations. So how do you fit everything in? But even students like Darren, who as a business major, you think, okay, that's pretty straightforward. They've got a lot of options, sure. But in Darren's case, there were so many options. Which do you choose? Or lastly, Noel, first-gen college student who, particularly at the typical events that were offered at his institution, became overwhelmed. Career fairs, I remember my own experience. Just having the courage to walk in the door and shake that first employer's hand took me a good 10, 15 minutes. And I think I finally did it because I saw a friend who kind of said, we're going to just go together. And that helped me. So I'm sure we can all relate to these student stories. But what's nice about this particular conversation is it doesn't just address students. Many of you indicated that you are employer facing. And so I want to encourage you to also think about where this could plug in to some of the challenges that you're hearing from employers. For instance, companies that say, I want to reach students earlier. I want to get in front of those first and second year students. Or I want to build my brand. I have my target schools. That's what Train and PwC did or said to us when they first started working with us. Or companies like Staples and Lenovo, household names, but students don't think about their corporate opportunities. And so they were students were narrowly focusing on what potential opportunities there were. Or companies like Xylem or even Northrop Grumman that many students don't necessarily know about because they don't direct to consumer sell or something that students just, again, may not have heard of. Or even companies like Microsoft and Pepsi who had kind of the reverse challenge of Xylem and Northrop Grumman that, students know who we are, but we're not recruiting for in the case of Microsoft tech roles. We're still struggling to fill some areas. In a Microsoft case, it was more of an HR type of role that they were using the micro-internship to find. Lots of these challenges and ways that this can plug in and complement some of the things that you're already doing, which is where I'm really excited to talk with you about. So just to give you a quick overview of what and who Parker Dewey is, you may have noticed our logo is a Venn diagram because we have three primary stakeholders: students, organizations, broadly defined companies and thereabouts, as well as you are our partners or potential partners. So for students, our mission is to help students go from college to career, just bridge the gap from that early career stage in life to land them into meaningful long-term employment. We want to help students gain professional experiences so that they can launch their careers. And we want to do so as accessibly as possible. And I'll be talking a lot about that shortly. For companies, this is a hiring tool. Whether that is a one-off project, but more importantly and increasingly, how can this fit in to their corporate recruiting strategy? We are seeing organizations use micro-internships to access new talent, engage the students that they would have otherwise missed, assess their skills so they can make sure they're making the right hire, and ultimately hire this early career talent. And we'll talk a lot about that as well. We coined the phrase micro-internships, been doing this over 10 years now, so learned a few things here and there, but really excited about how this can plug in with any type of organization. Now, in today's conversation, I'm going to largely use the phrase companies, but I'll apologize in advance because that is myopic. We are seeing organizations as small as Joe's barbershop down the street, all the way up to the Fortune 100 companies like those that I just featured on the previous slide, government entities, nonprofit organizations. Think as broadly as you can about where and how these organizations might be able to use this to hire your students. Which leads me to you, because you are the connector of all of this. Your job, if you work in career services, is to get your students hired, to make your employers happy. Having come from that space, I definitely know that is not easy, particularly when the economy is a bit of a transient situation. I spoke to some schools at NACE just a few days ago that government employment really, really hard right now. So how can you help support your students in this difficult time? Well, this is an avenue. Add this to your toolbox. And I'm really excited about sharing some ideas and some strategies of how you can do just that. We're not here to replace anything you're already doing, but hopefully provide another avenue for you to share with your employers and to get your students more experiences. Now, we've partnered with over 800 colleges and universities across the country, all of which are inbound. We don't do any marketing to partners. We love and are honored to work with anyone who would find this useful. We try to make the barriers to doing so as minimal as possible. And so again, we're really excited and happy to help you, whatever way that looks like for you. So what is a micro-internship? Let's start there. We define them as short-term, paid, professional projects that are completed on demand by highly motivated early career talent. Now, let me unpack that definition as there's a lot there. First and foremost, these are projects. These aren't full-time jobs, internships, they're projects. If you think about what many of your students are doing right now during their summer internships, they probably on day 1 or 2 of their internship got assigned a whole bunch of projects that they're going to complete over those summer months. Great. Every single one of those discrete projects could be a micro-internship. That's what we're seeing on Parker Dewey. It allows organizations to have that flexibility to be able to get these projects completed year-round, and for students to be able to engage in these activities year-round as well. And it can do so in addition to everything else that they are juggling in their life. They're centered on a specific deliverable. So when posting these projects, when we're vetting them, that's a big thing we're keeping in mind. What is that ultimate resumeable experience that the student will have to be able to showcase so that they can take that as an artifact to the next employer and next job interview that they're going to be going to. Short term generally means for us between 10 and 40 hours, and usually those are completed within a few days, maybe a few weeks. But that start and end date is determined by the organization who's posted the project. Again, this is designed to be flexible for both the company and the student sees that so that they can decide if they're available, if they're interested, etc., and then they can apply if they want. These are posted year-round, on demand, most are remote, and it's designed to be easy for these companies because we as in Parker Dewey, handle all of the administration. So the company doesn't have to figure out, how do I pay the student upon completion? We take care of that. And for the student, they don't have to figure out, oh, how am I going to invoice and track down these companies to pay me? No. We take care of that. And so for the student, it allows them to bundle together lots of different projects as their schedule and interests see fit so that they can customize their own experiences and they can do so on top of everything else that they may be juggling as a busy college student. Let's talk about payment though, because that's key. Every one of these micro-internships on Parker Dewey are real. These aren't simulated experiences. There is an organization at the other end that the student is put directly in contact with as soon as they're selected. And so because it's real, we think it's only fair that students are paid. Full stop. We don't do anything unpaid just because we just don't think that's right. But again, we handle that payment so that it's easy for all. They're paid a fixed fee, typically around $20 per estimated hour of work. But if it's a 20-hour project, the student's rate of pay won't change whether they spend 18 hours, 19 hours, 21 hours, 22 hours, etc. So the students should be thinking about, am I interested in the project? And they tell us in feedback surveys that, it wasn't so much about the money as just building the experience, but the money made it so that they could do it in some cases, but also made it so that they take it more seriously. And so that it's just a little bit more of a positive signal that this is something that the company values because they're putting down some money to hire me to do this. Last of all, these are all professional projects. This isn't babysit my kids, walk my dog, etc. These are all things that would be resumeable experiences similar to what a student is doing during a summer internship or first job after college. All right, cost. Let's talk about that. Here's some good news. As I mentioned for students, Our platform is 100% projects are paid, and there's no cost to the students ever. They can create an account right now. If you work with alumni, they can create an account right now. If you're leading orientation for incoming students, as long as they're 18, they can create an account right now. So again, we want this to be open. And so again, if you are not a partner of Parker Dewey, that is not a prerequisite for you to be able to share this with your students. We are an open platform, and I'll talk more about that shortly. For companies, there is also no cost for them to create an account or to post their project. We only invoice them once they select however many students that they want to work with. Their total cost is very transparent. You'll see an example of that shortly. But essentially, it's whatever that amount that students would receive, plus a 10% administrative fee covering our costs of administering the project. Now, there are additional opportunities if companies want to use this more programmatically and basically buy a whole bunch of micro-internships, and we help with with helping with the projects and targeting different students, et cetera. We do have companies who are using this at scale to align with various hiring goals. That's a separate thing. That's not a prerequisite for companies to get on board. They can try this with one project and scale from there. Similarly for partners, there is no cost for us to establish a basic partnership. And again, I'll share with you what that looks like. And we do have options to do more, like our friends at Harvey Mudd have done, where you can, if you want to have additional programmatic support or additional access to seeing your students and employers' engagement, you can do so. And again, we'll talk more about that. So we're going to start by talking about how this works for companies. Why? Well, because we'll get to the students, don't worry. But what we find is that the students are more successful when companies hear about Parker Dewey and micro-internships. You can, as you'll see, encourage companies to post just for your students. So this is how to do that. They post the project, pick the student that they want to work with, and the work gets done. It's just as simple as that. If they need help, we have colleagues that work one-on-one with employers. We vet each of these projects individually. We can certainly notify the employers and the schools when there's projects just posted just for them. And of course, we also handle all the payroll. So a lot of support for these different companies. But just to give you a couple of examples, so post the project, first of all, they decide what do they need to have done. Now, most of these projects are templated. We have a project library that they can access to check this out at their leisure. So if you're curious and you want to kind of get a sense of what are some typical micro-internships, I'll put the link to this in the chat. You'll see a lot of links scattered throughout today's presentation. Don't worry, you'll get the slides. You can certainly dig into any of these links that would be useful for you. Now, if you choose not to have a templated project, companies can start from scratch and they can create their own project saying what they need to have done and how much their budget is. And they can then say, I only want students from whatever schools to be able to see that project. And that's a real advantage here. With our partners like Harvey Mudd, you can promote this to your employers so that this is another way that they can hire these amazing students that you have at your institutions. So we set up pages like what you see on the bottom right corner exclusively for our partners. Again, there is no cost for us to set those up for you. And that can be put on your website, social media, via employer newsletters, et cetera. It's, again, another avenue to promote opportunities for your students and employers. As I mentioned before, there is no cost if companies want to post a project. And if they do end up hiring a student, as you can see in this bottom left quadrant, it is very clear. In this case, the amount students will receive, in this case, $400, and the amount that the company would pay per student is just over $440 for that particular project. From there, the company will see those who applied, those students who have raised their hand and said, yeah, I want to do this project. They'll see all of those students in a list. They'll be able to see if the student uploaded their resume or if they put a LinkedIn link in their profile, and they'll be able to see how the student answered these short answer application questions. And we'll talk more about that shortly, but that allows them to quickly decide who's a good fit. What we're seeing with these questions is it's replacing the need for companies to do a phone screen. It makes it real easy because the company can quickly see, yeah, the student put together a thoughtful answer, or Not so much. From there, as I mentioned, the company and the student are immediately put in touch with each other as soon as the student is selected so that they can set up a Zoom or Teams or however they want to meet, go over the project, go over the details, how are they going to work together, timeline, etc. We send both the student and the employer kickoff information and assistance so that they're both on the same page about how they want to work together, deadlines, etc. But the students are working autonomously. This is not an experience that maybe all of your students will be ready for. If you find that you have a student who needs a lot of handholding, this may not be the right experience to offer or encourage them to do yet. But if you have a really highly motivated go-getter, maybe a first-year student even, we've had students do a micro-internship even before they matriculated. If you have that student, and we all know you do that, you do have those, this is a great opportunity for them to get some real paid experiential learning experience whenever they want and to be able to apply. And again, it's a competitive opportunity, but it is a great opportunity that you can offer to any student, irrespective of their major, irrespective of what year they are, so that they can start to build their resume and get in front of these companies. So why do companies use this? Where does this fit in? Well, it generally falls into three categories, but one employer might be using it for any number of different things. So for example, we have companies who say, you know what, I have a role that I'm trying to fill. I came to the career fair recruiting for my management training program in whatever, great, but I still need more talent in that area. Okay, so what companies will do is they'll post what we call audition projects, a project that aligns to the skills that are required for that job, and the student does the project so they can demonstrate that they have those core, soft, or durable skills, whatever phrase you want to use. For the student, keep in mind that this is generally going to align directly to an open full-time role or internship. So those audition projects that they'll see on Parker Dewey may not be ones that you'll want to encourage all students to apply for. Tell them to read the description carefully, because the description will say if they should only apply if they are going to graduate in blah, blah, blah timeframe. Similarly, we see companies who are looking to build their talent pipeline and brand. And those are going to be your companies that not necessarily household names, but they're really trying to deepen their brand awareness or maybe deepen their relationship with students at target schools. Oftentimes, these will be research-related projects where they're looking for first and second year students. So they can identify those students who are high potential and get on those students' radar in order to then shortlist them for that full-time summer internship when they're after their junior year. Oftentimes, companies will hire lots of students for these projects so that they can clearly discern how many students are going to be, these are the great students, these are the ones that did, okay, and then these are the ones that, not the best fit. This is a great opportunity for any student, first year all the way through alum. If they're interested in the project, they should apply. And so those are, again, you're coaching these students. If they're seeing a lot of these really interesting research projects, oftentimes it's with companies they've never heard of. This is a golden opportunity. They may realize that, gosh, this is an industry or a company or a size of organization that I never would have considered, but this project is super interesting. I'm glad I did this. And that's what we're hearing from the students who've completed projects like this. And then, of course, there's also just those who have that ad hoc project. Maybe you just got off the phone with an employer who said, yeah, I really need a summer help. I didn't get an intern, or this is something that's available year-round, on demand. The thing to keep in mind for the students in these cases is oftentimes there are smaller companies who don't necessarily have the skills to do that project on their team. So the student shouldn't necessarily need a lot of handholding with that project. They should, if it says build a website or design a website, or they should know how to do that. So the company will state what it is that they're looking for, the skills and competencies. The student should make sure that they have those when applying to that project. And what we see is that oftentimes those projects might lead for more projects. That website design project might lead to, oh, I need an app too. Can you help me with that? Or that social media marketing project. Oh, you know what? I also have something that needs help with this SEO optimization. And again, we see that lots of repeat micro interns getting rehired because of doing these great jobs with some of these shorter term projects with smaller organizations. And all of this is great outcomes for the students. To give you a specific example of that first type for those companies who say, yeah, I want to audition for a specific role, well, here you go. We help these companies identify the projects. In this case, it was the full-time role was an entry-level data marketer. We'll unpack that job description, identifying based on what they're looking for, specific projects that are a good fit for showcasing that whether or not a student can do that. So if it says I need to gather, analyze, and report marketing data, great. How about a data cleanup and visualization project to see if a student can do that? We'll help the company scope out that project or projects. They work with multiple students usually on that project so they can really decide who is the best at showcasing those different skills. For those of you that I mentioned, Melinda mentioned that you're from a community college, this is also a really fantastic opportunity for students that may be from schools that are not on companies' radar. Maybe a company's never considered it, the amazing talent that exists in our community colleges. Maybe this company's never considered a liberal arts student because they're so focused on business or engineering students. This is a great way that we're seeing companies expand their purview to consider talent that they otherwise would have missed. A big theme at NACE this year was skills-based hiring. That's exactly what this is. And we're super excited because this is as equitable as it gets and it's accessible to as many students as we can make it. So for those of you who work with employers, and I know from the little survey on the end now, so it's no longer a distraction, a lot of you indicated that you work with employers. Here is a resource that may be useful for you to either share with employers or maybe just to print off and have accessible. This is designed to be kind of that one pager, where does this all fit in? Think of this as just that a print off, put on your desk or on your bulletin board that can really show you when an employer says that they're experiencing these challenges. Here's how micro-internships can help. Here's a quick little quote to showcase why the student says that it works in that particular context. So I'll put this in the chat just in case this is a helpful resource for you to either print off and just have handy or share with a colleague that might be working with employers. Also, quick little case study. Florida A&M has been one of our most successful institutions for sharing micro-internships with employers. As of just a few days ago, they had over 190,000. They're getting very close to that $200,000 mark. And some of it was grant funded, but what they're seeing is that in this case, these grant dollars have helped pique employers' interests so that the employers then want to self-fund these projects on their own. It's something we see a lot. And so one of the things I do want to highlight with FAMU is that when they're posting about micro-internships on their employer website, they're a handshake school. This is not designed to replace Handshake, Simplicity, 1220, or whatever platform you're using. This is designed to be a complement, another option. And in the case of FAMU, these students tended to have graduated with lots of job offers. So this is a differentiator, a way for companies who are struggling with brand recognition or who are just really wanting to get on students' radar as early as possible. This is a great complement, great way for them to kind of get above some of the noise that FAMU students in this case are really getting a lot of messaging and a lot of options. This is a way to attract those students in a different way. FAMU was also very aggressive in how they promoted micro-internships to their employers. That example you see on the right was an email that they sent a year and a half or two ago now, but this is when they started to ramp up their program, really showcasing some of the metrics that they've seen thus far. They sent that out liberally, though, to all of the employers in their Handshake database. They didn't pick and choose. This was a very broad-based campaign. And that's another strategy I would encourage you to think about. Don't just try to think, oh, I'm only going to target these companies. You're missing out because you just never know where this might fit in for companies, as I mentioned in those in the previous examples. So now let's talk about students. How does it work for them? Well, again, designed to be easy. They create a profile. There's no single sign-on or IT integration required. They create their own profile, providing their own data. Think of this a bit like LinkedIn. Use whatever email they want, put whatever information they want in their profile. They'll see the projects, they apply, and if they're selected, they work and complete the project. Now, our role in this is that we do the vetting of the projects. You don't need to worry about that. We look primarily at, is the project a good fit as a micro-internship? It's not a full-time job internship. Is it project-based? Is it professional? And is it paid fairly? Those are the primary things that we're looking at. And we do kick back any project that doesn't meet those criteria. And again, we're handling all of the administration. So students who are selected for micro-internships, set up on our payroll, et cetera, and then they're done. They don't have to worry about doing that if they go on and do subsequent projects. So again, just to give you some quick ideas of what it looks like for students. Most students hear about micro-internships from their school's career services. And so we'll set up a page like what Colorado State's example is. Again, that's for our partners. There's no cost to that. They can go to parkerdewey.com and create an account as well, though it really doesn't matter. It all leads them to the same place. But then from there, they'll create a brief profile about their educational experience. You're welcome to do this as well if you're curious to see how does it work for students. They can upload their resume if they want. It's not required, but definitely recommended. And then they'll see the projects that are available to them. Now, in the case of that leftmost screenshot, you'll notice that there's a featured projects section and then an all open micro-internship section. What does that mean? Well, featured projects are featured because the company has said that they want students from that school. As I mentioned before, that's an easy way for companies to build relationships with target schools. Maybe they're a local employer and they only want to work with local students. There's lots of reasons why these companies choose to feature these projects. And then there's projects that are open to everybody. So many projects are open to all. Most are featured. So keep that in mind. If you're not seeing projects that align to your students' interests, then share this with your employer so that they will be more likely to be projects that align with what your students want. But when they are seeing the projects, they can click details and read more about that particular opportunity. They can see the description of what they would need to do, the start date, the due date, the amount they'll get paid, how many hours it's expected them to take. If it's remote or on-site, some might be on-site, but well over 90% are remote. And then they can, if they're interested, apply. And to apply, the student has to answer at least one short answer application question. There's always a default question, which is why should we select you? But the company can also add additional questions that pertain to the project. So to give you quick examples of this, the application process, with these short answer questions is designed, as I mentioned, to replace the phone screen. So why should we select you? Well, side-by-side comparison, Emma had a nice response to both questions, customized for that particular project. Emma added a resume. Emma had a letter of recommendation. Emma really put her best foot forward. Emma was hired, not only for that project, but she ended up getting hired full-time for this organization. Compared to Wyatt, and they applied to the same project. It said, why should we pick you? He had nice responses, but they were limited in details. And there was no resume. And there was no, why this role, why this industry compared to any other project that they may have found. No resume, no headshot, no supporting documents. There was a misspelled word, lots of things. Now, Wyatt wasn't even given the chance to do the project. And so, unlike Emma, Wyatt missed out on everything else that was to come, which in the case of this project, they specifically said, don't apply unless you're interested in the full-time role. Well, Wyatt never was given an opportunity for that full-time role because he didn't put his best foot forward when it came to applying for the project. If you're curious, we do have other examples that you can look at your leisure if you are advising these students. Now, for the students, these are the 5 that we met earlier, and you can read more about them, just quick quotes about how this helped them in their career journey. I'm not going to read the quotes to you, but again, really positive experiences for these students. And we're seeing that the students are using this in a variety of different ways at all stages of their academic journey, which is, again, super rewarding and fun to see. Now, 2 populations I do want to target and highlight, though. First, international students. Can they do this? Yes, but they do have to have work authorization. So CPT, OPT, it depends on the school. And so what we do when a student is selected for a micro-internship, they'll get a congratulations message, but it also says, if you are an international student, contact your school's international office as soon as possible to confirm that you can do this. They may need to request a letter, a CPT, OPT, whatever. We provide that letter for them. We have a form getting all the information that we'll need in order to present them with that letter. And we write lots of those letters so we know roughly what they should say. We also, when the student creates their account, they do have a work authorization section that they have to complete. It's not visible to companies, but one of the categories is F1J1. If they indicate that, there is a pop-up that indicates, go to your school's international office to confirm you can do this. So we want to make sure the students walk into this with eyes wide open so that they can understand that this may not be an accessible option to them for every project. I definitely recognize and know a little bit or enough about CPT to know that every school is different, every program is different. There may not be some options that are available for some of these students. So hopefully that's helpful. And again, happy to talk offline. We do have those students that do this. And Sai, the student featured in the slide, is certainly one of those. He used the micro-internship as a way to build a professional network in the United States because he really wanted to land a job in the US and need some professional references from the US. The other population I want to talk a little bit about are undocumented students. I may have some better news for them in that many of the times they can do micro-internships even if they don't have DACA or TPS. And the reason is because they're working as independent contractors of Parker Dewey to do micro-internships. They only need to have a valid ITIN, so individual taxpayer ID number. They can request this. It is a lengthy process to be able to secure an ITIN, so they should have that ITIN before they apply to a micro-internship. Why? Well, if they're selected, our payroll system, one of the first questions that they're going to be asked is to provide their ITIN number. And if they don't have one, they can't get set up in payroll, meaning we can't pay them. So again, we want to make sure that they have all of that documentation ahead of time so that there aren't any hiccups if they are selected for an opportunity. Again, we do a lot of work supporting undocumented students. We are so honored to be able to give them this option, as I realize that this may be one of the only options for undocumented students to get paid work. But if you do advise undocumented students, do make sure that they're aware of that ITIN requirement. So what are some of the effectiveness of micro-internships? Well, straight from the students, we hear that they are increasing in the NACE career readiness competencies pretty much across the board. We have lots of improvement, a lot or a little. My personal favorite is when I see students that, maybe they didn't change, but they built confidence. We see a lot of students do micro-internships as underclassmen. And so that confidence building experience, particularly since this is the first professional experience for many students, it's really great to see that this is just designed to be that stepping stone so that they feel more confident that they can put to work what they've learned in the classroom and use this as the next opportunity to get that leg up for whatever they want to do longer term. Now, if you're curious, we do have a more extensive report and analysis about where this fits in from the NACE career readiness competencies. We also hear that employers are overwhelmingly impressed by the students' performance. Over 97% of micro-interns meet or exceed their expectations. Some other data that we're seeing is that students from underrepresented populations are disproportionately selected for micro-internships. Over 80% of students selected come from underrepresented backgrounds. Now, we think about underrepresented backgrounds very holistically. So we look at a lot of different categories, such as, yes, race and ethnicity, yes, gender equity, but we also look at categories like first gen, Pell eligible, et cetera. And again, across the board, we see some really, really positive results about the impact of how this can fit in for the diverse array of students who are in American higher education. We also see that companies are really enjoying the benefits if they're using this for a hiring tool, significant reduction in costs for those who are using this at scale. And more to the bottom line, the students who are selected for micro-internships and go on to get hired, when we do the analysis and first gen surveys, et cetera, or first destination surveys, excuse me, we find that they are far more likely to stay in that first job after college after completing micro-internships. They have more data to figure out what is the right fit for them, and so they're able to make a more informed decision. Which leads me to you. How and where can this fit in for you if you're interested in partnering with us? Well, first of all, there's a bunch of different options. So we have a basic no-cost partnership where we'll set up landing pages for you, different webinars and other presentations. We have a ton of marketing collateral that you can access, and we're honored to give you data so that you can understand the impact of your students' engagement with micro-internships. That data we find is really, really valuable to many of our partners, which is why we developed an additional partnership option, which we call Parker Dewey Plus. I'll show you a little bit more about that, but essentially that gives you the data on demand. And then lastly, the programs, and I'll talk more about those extensively as well, are essentially where schools are saying, I have funding that I would like to allocate to supporting my students via micro-internships. Basically, you prepay for your students to have these projects and work with with employers of your choice. And again, we'll talk more about that shortly. So for the basic, again, no cost free partnership, how does it all work? Well, we first set up these landing pages for you, and they're pretty straightforward. This is an example of the student-facing landing page, and then we set up with your logo, colors, there's an FAQ section, micro-internships by the numbers, etc. And then similarly, we'll set up something for your employers as well. I don't want the little video to go, so I'm going to X out of that. But again, same idea. And the turnaround time for getting that set up is typically between 24 to 48 hours. This is something that you can start whenever you want, very, very quick. As far as the marketing collateral goes, again, we have lots of different resources available. So if you're looking for content for, say, students, great. Maybe you need social media content. You want to start executing your social media content calendar for the upcoming semester, no problem. What's nice about micro-internships is you can put this in anytime you want, and we have a ton of pre-made collateral that you can use year-round. You've got the caption, the link, the image, use whatever you like, change what you don't, but it's all there for you to use whenever you want. Similarly, if you are looking for content, say for employers, and maybe you have a company that is coming to your office in 10 minutes and you need a quick little flyer just to tell them a little bit more about micro-internships as another way that they can recruit your students. Great. Fine. This might be, if maybe they're a smaller organization, maybe they're a bigger company, but you can give them this particular printout as a PDF. Here's for a smaller company. Hey, this is a project-based support. Here you go. Or maybe they're an organization who want to take an extra few minutes to customize this particular resource. No problem. Here's the exact same flyer accessible via Canva, so you can plug in your own logo and highlight what it is that you want to highlight here. So in this case, Marquette, Kennesaw State University, St. John's River, etc. There's lots of different options. In their case, they decided to put some contact information there. Again, use this as you see fit, but it makes it easy for you, so you don't have to spend a ton of time creating your own content. And then we're always happy to talk with you one-on-one. Got lots of different webinars and things to make sure that you're getting the latest information. We do regular newsletters twice a month. And as far as data goes, we're honored to provide this for you up to one time a year. But our big ask is, are you promoting this to employers? Are you promoting this to students? And to help you with that, we developed a checklist of items that we want all of our partners to do every year. And it's a bit of your prerequisite to be able to access your data. Why? Well, we want to make sure that if you're not doing these things, chances are your data is not going to be that great. Your students aren't going to be as likely to get selected if you're not promoting Parker Dewey to your students and employers. Full stop. We have a whole webinar that can explain the rationale of why that is. But think of this as your Parker Dewey homework, designed to take an hour, maybe 2 hours to queue up. You can do it during the summer. It's a great summer project. And then you can go ahead and request your data whenever you want. If you want an additional poll of data, no problem. Just do another webinar or just another big promotion to employers. And we're happy to give you another poll of your data so that you can measure the impact of that particular engagement. Now, speaking of webinars, etc., we do host this particular session. We just hosted a few weeks ago. You can check out the recording if you want, but we're going to host it again. It was our first time doing this data-driven best practices, but it essentially explains why we're recommending all of these different things when it comes to promoting Parker Dewey. So in a few weeks, August 5th is the specific date for our next live session, but you can check out the recording if that would be helpful. And I'll say this again, engaging students. If you're just thinking about students, great, but you're missing an opportunity. To put it another way, think about who else you can share this with. We have found, our partners have found that this plugs into a lot of different types of other initiatives. Alumni engagement, employers, of course, recruiters, small businesses, large companies, local organizations, nonprofits. I've even had conversations with nonprofits that say, we love interns, but we can't afford to pay them. But given the low cost of a micro-internship, this is better serves our needs, and we can still offer a paid opportunity. Grant writing teams have found that adding these to grant proposals, and we're happy to help you with that, have helped them secure different grant-funded initiatives. And even on campus or at projects where you can hire your own students for your own needs. Also want to share with you the impact of promoting Parker Dewey consistently to employers. These are public colleges from the exact same state. And you can see they have promoted, in the case of the one in green, they have promoted micro-internships consistently throughout the year. It's in all their publications about how to engage with their students for employers. Whereas the one on the right, they haven't done much. And you can see the data that shows for it. $3,500 to the students and plus, and one of those students we just found out has been hired full-time for doing the micro-internship versus $300 for the other organization or the other school. Another example, when my computer decides to move forward here, that I'll highlight. And again, if you have questions, please feel free to plug those into the chat. My computer is taking its moment here to advance. But I also want to highlight a few of these success stories. I mean, that's what it's all about. These three, literally, I just created this slide about an hour ago because they're that hot off the press. But IU Northwest notified us just late last week, sharing this video of a student who was hired full-time after doing a micro-internship with a local Indianapolis HR firm. The student in the middle from Florida International and Broward College, she was hired a year ago and is doing some really great work with a small cybersecurity company, cybersecurity major. So again, great to see. And then Harishma, she actually did an interview with us not too long ago, but she was hired even faster than, was promoted even faster than was typical at HCA for her particular micro-internship. And the quote that you see at the bottom is from the company that, the employer that she was hired by. And that was their rationale for doing this project. They wanted a fresh perspective. And this is what the result was, is that they hired a really great hire who's done extremely well ever since. I wanted to highlight these three because this is what it's all about, going from micro-intern to hired, but also to share with you the variety of companies. These are small boutique organizations all the way up to a massive international company like HCA Healthcare, the full spectrum of organizations using micro-internships as a recruiting tool for these longer-term engagements. Now, I do want to touch briefly on some of these additional partnership options in case it's of interest to you. So first of all, Parker Dewey Plus. This essentially gives you a platform where you can access your data on demand. And we built this because our partners were saying, we want this data more readily. And so in case of student engagement, if you work with students, you'll be able to see not only how many of them have signed up, download reports, and so on, but you can click on those students and see their profiles. You can see the feedback that they've given about the NACE career readiness competencies. You can see the projects that are available for your students right here and now. If you work with employers, you can also see how many of them have created accounts, have worked with your students, the feedback that those companies have given to your students. All of that is available on demand. And so you can see that, coach those employers. Hey, you said you were interested, but you haven't posted a project. Coach the students. Hey, you did a great job on a few things, but notice that, for instance, that you said your professionalism was really, really strong, but some of the employer feedback was not quite as aligned. So again, teachable, coachable moments for those students so that hopefully they're doing a phenomenal job across the board. But if there are opportunities to improve, here you go, some additional avenues that you can do to coach them accordingly. And then also as part of that $2,000 a year subscription is $400 going right back to your students to be a student ambassador for your institution. That student ambassador can handle the marketing of micro-internships to students, to employers, whatever you want to have them do. We have a full, robust array of information that can give you a to-do list for those students so that, again, it's easy for you to manage them. It has all of the collateral that they'll need to do this promotion. You can just tell them, yep, I want you to do this. No, don't worry about that. You can customize that, but it just takes away some of the burden that adding this to your to-do list, have the student do it. That guarantees you'll have that student who is able to promote this initiative at your institution. Also, to the question that came up in the chat, so can you send the promotional flyer for students? Absolutely. I'm going to go ahead and put a link to the all of the content in our marketing toolkit, and you can go ahead and click students or whatever audience you want to be able to filter this to whatever piece of collateral might be most relevant for you. But within Parker Dewey Plus, you'll have a link to both the checklist of content and that full robust toolkit right there accessible within the tool, very easy to find. And then lastly, an annual impact report. So as you're working maybe right now, if your fiscal year ends the end of this month, it's real easy to pull that high-level data about your students' engagement and success with micro-internships via that annual impact report. Now, some of you may not be aware of this, but you may already be eligible to get Parker Dewey Plus for free. Why? How? Well, first of all, we're going to talk more about Parker Dewey programs in a moment, but if you have a program funded by your institution, you can have access to Parker Dewey Plus already as part of that program fee. So that's for the entire year if that program is $10,000 or more. Doesn't include the student ambassador, although you can use your program funds to fund that initiative. But again, that's a great option. Or maybe you might be eligible for it because of a program that we are already running. So Parker Dewey is working with a number of different entities, organizations, nonprofits who have already funded micro-internships for students at schools nationwide. We have a program, for instance, with the DeLuca Foundation, where they have funded micro-internships for students at any college or university in Connecticut or Florida and all HBCUs and members of the HSI Career Collaborative. If that is you, let us know and we'll give you PD Plus for free, full stop, through the duration of the program. Similarly, Kansas and Indiana schools, you also may be able to have access to this as well. Kansas, the only reason you may not is if you're a private school because of that particular stipulation with their program, but any public college or university and private institution in Indiana can also have access to this. So here's the dates, just because all these are grant and other funded types of things. They do have their rules about how long they're eligible. And so for right now, DeLuca expires the end of May next year. Kansas and Indiana, well, the funding is available for the sake of Kansas right now, at least, it's the end of 2025. Let us know, though, and happy to give you more information about these incredible programs. Not only does it give you this Parker Dewey Plus access, but it also curates more opportunities for your students. Which leads me to this last option, Parker Dewey programs. So as I mentioned briefly, this is an initiative where a school partner, organization, company has said, I want to post these projects just for students at this school or these schools and so on. And the logos you see at the bottom, those are give you some examples of the types of programs that we're facilitating. Basically, you pick the students, you pick the companies, the projects themselves are curated just for your institution. Now, just to give you a little bit more of a, why and how and what does all this mean, we're seeing that schools oftentimes do this as a way to support other institutional goals and objectives. For example, we're going to be kicking off a program in the next few weeks with an institution that has a really, really well-regarded set of programs, very well-known, reputable school, but is struggling for its arts and humanities students. An industry really hard hit right now. So their particular micro-internship program, at least as they've defined it right now, is going to target those students. And so those projects are going to align to the interests of arts and humanities versus others that might be focused on sophomores. We're running a program right now with Bucknell where it's sophomore business students. Again, you pick those details. We've been running these programs since 2021, learned a lot about it over the years. We see this with higher education institutions, nonprofits, organizations that are supporting companies like the SHRM Foundation, and even private companies as well. So some things to think about, and I know I'm moving through this rather quickly, but just a few things. First of all, engaging other stakeholders. Where else could this align? All of these programs will support students, so that's great, that's regardless. But where else could it align with faculty, with the small business community, alumni, et cetera? And that's also thinking about the funding sources. We're kicking off a program in the next week or two tied to alumni supporting student athletes, specifically in football. Again, it can be customized as much as you want. The cost of these programs are very customizable as well. We see programs, we're running a pilot right now that's as small as $5,000, and it's going to support 20 students, versus ones that are upwards of whatever the funding budget that you really would want to allocate. The funds can roll over, the funds can be initiated whenever you want. This works really well for use or lose budgets that we're seeing right now, particularly as the fiscal year is ending. But in this case of this $10,000 program, $8,000 of that goes directly to the students. The $2,000 is where we come in to help manage it so that it's as low lift for you as possible. And in the case of those 18 students that are supported, that's if you're wanting to do 20-hour projects for the students to get $400, but you don't have to do it that way. If you wanted to support more students, you could do 10-hour projects and double the number of students that are getting experience. Or you can have the students do longer experiences. Again, lots of flexibility. You have full autonomy to be able to decide what aligns with your goals. And again, we're there and here to help make that easy. We'll set up the websites, send you the marketing materials, give you access to the dashboard so you can track it, give you the collateral that you need to launch it. You can measure the impact of it. Again, really designed to be as hands-off as possible so that your students are able to get experience, you're able to engage these employers, and that it's not adding a ton of work to your team. And I will highlight a couple of case studies. You can read through it at your leisure. Swarthmore was one of the first to initiate a program with us. They reached out to us in the early days of the pandemic because they said, we love our micro-internship program, but it's a lot of work. How do we scale it? Well, we've been running it ever since to help them achieve that goal. Similarly, University of Delaware, theirs is focused on supporting state government and nonprofits in the state of Delaware. So it aligns to this, how do we keep talent and support our other state entities, and also educate students on career opportunities in the public service. And they keep continuing to expand their program. They're right now running it just during the summer. They also ran it over winter break. Okay, or they could be run ongoing. It's up to you. George Washington University, there it started out as a use or lose grant, and now it has scaled to be a year-round program. Again, just a few examples. We're going to be hosting a webinar next week if you want to learn a little bit more about this. I'd love to just give you more ideas and where this could fit in and just some additional options. So I will put that link in the chat in case it's helpful or